What up, bros? I'm Frank. This is another episode of Versus. In this episode, we have the Nerf Hyperfire versus the Nerf Rapidstrike. Pretty similar blasters. I know quite a few people are interested, which should I buy? Before we can decide which is better, of course, we have to say the similarities. Both are flywheel blasters. However, the Hyperfire does have different flywheels, but they are still flywheels. Both are fully automatic, magazine-fed blasters, so potentially high capacity, and kind of fulfill that full auto support gunner role. If you want to go over every similarity, they're both blue, they both have white, they're both made by Nerf, they both fire Nerf darts, and they're both found here on Earth, but come on, let's be reasonable here. But to decide which is better, let's go over the highlights or the key pros of each blaster, starting out with the Nerf Rapidstrike. The first pro of the Rapidstrike, in my opinion, is the grip, overall comfort, and the more traditional ergonomics. It feels more like a normal Nerf blaster or like a normal gun. It's not like unusual and it's not alienating. By that I mean traditional looking stock, traditional grip, traditional magazine location, and it holds on your shoulder in a very familiar fashion, which most people can pick up and feel comfortable with almost immediately. This contrasts with the Hyperfire, which is just a little bit awkward, and the thumbhole stock, as I mentioned in my review, is very uncomfortable. It doesn't feel traditional, and I'm sure quite a few people are going to pick this up and just not like it because of how it holds. I mean, this front region, it's just weird. Where do you put your hand? Where can I put my thumbhole hand? It's just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Obviously an exaggeration, but barely. Next pro for the Nerf Rapidstrike is the tactical attachments. You can put on a front barrel attachment, and holy rail space, Batman, you can put on every single Nerf attachment you own. If you like the lights, bipod, little lasers, the little sights, the front barrels, the Rapidstrike is way better for that. Because the Hyperfire has one rail for a red dot that's like really far forward in the blaster. Red dot would make a whole lot more sense like right here, not way over here. What am I running, an AK-47? Freaking AK peasants. Yeah, I'm biased. Get over it. It's my YouTube channel. I don't like the weird stuff. Next pro for the Rapidstrike is the cost. These retail for about $35 US. Of course, prices vary around the world, but if I compared that to the same retail price of the Hyperfire's $50 US, it's a little bit cheaper. And it comes down to what you're getting. They're so similar. You get a blaster in one magazine. Like if you get the Stampede, you have 3 stick magazines, the little shield, the bipod, you have all those cool attachments, which really justifies that increased cost. This is just sort of a, quote, better version of the Rapidstrike. And it doesn't have any extra attachments or extra stuff to really justify that $50 retail cost. And the last big advantage of the Rapidstrike, in my opinion, is the fact that it runs on C batteries instead of D batteries, which makes it a lighter package, the balance is nice, and the C batteries are cheaper. Of course, this pro doesn't really matter if you're going to modify the blaster. You can put both sort of battery systems into either blaster, but it's definitely worth noting. And that can also be compounded on the cost thing. C batteries are cheaper, so this will have a lower running cost over time. Of course, there are different highlights of the Rapidstrike, but those are the important pros in my opinion. And if you want to hear the cons, it's kind of the inverse of the opposing blaster's pros. So it'd be kind of redundant to say this one's lighter and then have a con as the Hyperfire, it's heavier. Do I need to say that twice? Just a little response to all the comments saying you have to go over the cons too. Watch the review if you want to see the cons. But I digress. Let's go over the pros or highlights of the Hyperfire. The first pro is the rate of fire. It is quite a bit faster than the Rapidstrike. If you're all about that support gunner and flinging as much foam as possible into your enemy, the Hyperfire does a little bit better job than the Rapidstrike. The next pro for the Hyperfire, which is a pretty big deal, is the tighter groupings compared to most other flywheel blasters, and definitely the Rapidstrike in particular. Hasbro modified the design of the flywheel unit for the Hyperfire so they're slightly canted and they kind of spiral the darts in a way, so the groupings are a little bit tighter, even with the horrible Nerf Elite darts. So yeah, you can actually hit stuff, and that's always nice. Check out the firing comparison of just the average group of the Hyperfire compared to the Rapidstrike. You can see it when you're shooting at 30 feet. You can see the lower amount of outliers in the central group just being tighter with the Hyperfire, which is definitely really cool. Being able to just spray foam everywhere with a Rapidstrike or any full auto blaster is definitely super fun, but being able to actually hit stuff, way better. The last pro, in my opinion, is just a tiny little detail. It feels a little smoother to fire the Hyperfire. When you rev it up, it's a little quieter, and when you're firing with the conveyor belt system, it feels a little smoother and quieter. The Rapidstrike doesn't vibrate out of control or anything, and I don't mean to exaggerate it, but it feels nice to have it just running a little bit smoother. The Hyperfire feels more like a well-oiled machine in comparison to the Rapidstrike. And that is the last pro of the Hyperfire. It's not the quantity, it's the quality of the pros. The groupings is a huge deal. So which is better, the Hyperfire or the Nerf Rapidstrike? People have been commenting and emailing me for a while to ask. And honestly, it's a tie. And I hate doing that because I made a video just to declare a winner. So let me explain. The Versus series kind of assumes you're not a modder, because once you begin to mod, you can customize anything, and why compare when you can just make the Rapidstrike into a Hyperfire if you really wanted to. So on paper, the Hyperfire, in my opinion, is superior. It feels smoother when you're firing it, it fires in tighter groups, and the velocity is actually a little bit higher than the Rapidstrike. Not a dramatic amount, but a few feet per second is better than not having it, right? So it's all good and fun, and if I could give a blaster to a support member, I would totally give them a Hyperfire, because I don't actually have to use it. They are. This thumbhole stock is so annoying. It's tiny and they give you no space at all, so my hand just kind of cramps up and it runs into the edge here, and that's not because I have an adult hand. I do have an adult hand, obviously, but even a child's hand will just cramp up, and thumbhole stocks are odd. The setup is kind of odd, and the lack of tactical rails turns me off of this blaster because I like to Nerf for fun. Getting to the Rapidstrike, which just feels phenomenal. It's very traditional, it feels great, it's easy to use, anybody can pick it up and fire it well, and it's definitely really comfortable for somebody of any body size at all. The performance is better out of the Hyperfire, but when my hand starts to cramp up and I don't want to play anymore because I'm just so annoyed with holding a blaster, performance doesn't really matter since I'm not going to be shooting anymore. So I have kind of a weird stance on this. What would be great is if I just ripped out the Hyperfire internals and threw them into a Rapidstrike, then I win, and then I have everything I want. But this Hyperfire doesn't belong to me, so I can't do that. I have to ship it back to the owner. Maybe I'll just send him back a Rapidstrike and a smiley face, see if he notices. They look similar enough, right? Yeah, he won't notice. Just kidding, of course, but this Versus is seriously a tie. And I hate doing that, man. The Hyperfire is awesome, and I don't mean to just throw a bunch of crap at this thumbhole stock, because some thumbhole stocks have been comfortable from Nerf, but this one is not. If you're interested in both blasters, I definitely recommend you hold a Hyperfire before you buy one, if you're like tight on money. So yeah, inconclusive Versus episode. Hopefully I can just point out all the key features and let you guys decide which is better for you and your playstyle and all of that. Seriously urge you to hold this and kind of run it and reload it and play with it for at least 10-15 minutes before making that purchase. And Hasbro Mechanical Engineers, if you guys watch my videos, nothing is wrong with a traditional build. Nobody gets tired of the Rapidstrike. They might get bored because it's not new and flashy, but you don't get sick of playing with it. People will tire of the Hyperfire pretty quickly, and they'll say, oh, that's no longer new and flashy. Oh, hey, let's look at how weird this shell is and how uncomfortable and unergonomic it is. Perhaps you had like Frodo Baggins in your workshop for all the ergonomics testing, but it is just weird, man. The proportions are odd. I'll stop with the negativity though. So yep, that is the Versus episode. Let me know what you think of my judgment in the comment section below. If you have any ideas for future Versus episodes, leave another comment in the section below. That's this episode. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, stay tactical. It's just like, I don't know what I'm doing.